Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the host of the Dean's Chat podcast, as well as the dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine. I'm joined today by my co-host, Dr. Johanna Richey. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. We are so fortunate today. We are joined by a very well-respected podiatrist out of California, Dr. Glenn Weinraub. Welcome to Dean's Chat, Dr. Weinraub.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You know, we're pretty informal on Dean's Chat, and if it's okay with you, let's go with first names, Glenn, Joe, and Jeff.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
So again, thank you so much, Glenn. I really appreciate you taking the time. When I was kind of reflecting back on some of the interactions that I've had with you over the years, the things that kept coming to mind are your warmth, your personality, your humility, your approachability. That's the word, the approachability of you. And I just respect you so much. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to our listeners about so many different opportunities in the field of podiatric medicine and surgery. So just to do a quick bio intro on you, Dr. Weinraub grew up in Encino, California, and got your bachelor's degree in molecular biology from California State University in Northridge. You went on to do your podiatric medical school at the California College of Podiatric Medicine in San Francisco, and then went to the opposite coast to do your surgical residency training program with the Northern Virginia Foot and Ankle Residency Program, and also referred to as the INOVA program. And then you've worked in multiple different organizational settings in Kaiser Permanente in Southern California and Northern California, and are in the process of a transition to a whole new working experience. And I'll let you talk about that if you want to, but we can save that for a up and coming reveal later as well. But before we jump into all of the academic and lecture prestige that you carry for our listeners, what I really would love to get some insight from you is you're preparing for one of your annual medical mission trips. Is that correct?
That is correct. We go to Vietnam once a year.
So tell us a little bit about that project.
Well, this will be my 12th year going. And we started out initially with collaborating with Kaiser Permanente's Global Health Project. I transitioned out of Kaiser a little more than a year ago, and I took the program with me, and now we've incorporated as a 503c, and we're called Bones Pro Bono, and we no longer isolate ourselves to lower extremity reconstruction in Danang, Vietnam. We do upper and lower extremity. So this year, I'm really proud and fortunate to have colleagues coming, including hand surgeons, shoulder surgeon, lower extremity reconstructive surgeons, nurses, physical therapists. We're quite a team this year. And each year we just seem to be getting bigger and bigger.
That's incredible. How long have you been doing it?
Like I said, this is my 12th year. And I didn't choose Vietnam. It's a long story. I won't get into that. But Vietnam definitely chose me. And it's by far the most gratifying endeavor I've done in my professional career. And I hope to do it forever.
Wow. Glenn, how do you structure a mission trip like that so that everybody gets to use their talents with patients that need them?
Well, that's tricky, but we do have it down to a little bit of a science now. Our first day there is a massive triage clinic. And because we've been going for so long, we have wonderful interaction and relationship with the orthopedic surgeons at the Danang Orthopedic and Rehabilitation Hospital. They are advertising right now as we speak that our surgeons will be coming at the beginning of next week. It's about a 300-mile radius we'll draw patients from. And on that first day, we have 4 or 5 treatment rooms, and we do quick triages. The Vietnamese surgeons do all the charting for us and all the patient-physician interaction, as well as the interpretation. And we quickly decide who is going to get surgery and who we can't help or we really don't need to help, who can the orthopedic surgeons there take care of. We really only want to concentrate on those deformities and pathologies that are incredibly unique, challenging, and that we have the unique ability to address.
Can you comment on some of the types of deformities that you guys typically will see?
We see everything, and that's why we bring residents every year too. And that's the beauty of it. The educational opportunity for the residents is insane. We are still seeing congenital deformities from Agent Orange. back in the Vietnam War. The war ended in 1975. We still see congenital deformities. If you do a soil sample of the dirt around Danang, you will still get toxic levels of digoxin in that material. It's pretty scary. So we get teratologic deformity, we get traumatic deformities, developmental, everything you can think of. And a lot of the deformities are things we just don't see here in the States. So there's a lot of MacGyver going on, a lot of working by the seat of our pants and just reaching back into our skill set and readapting it to whatever the pathology is in front of us. And I'm really happy to say, knock on wood, we have a really good track record there. So that's why they keep inviting us back.
That's fantastic. And I would imagine, having had so many different consistencies across the years in terms of working with the similar hospitals, is it usually the same group of local surgeons that you also will work with?
It absolutely is. And so a big shout out to some of my buddies there. Dr. Tondo is the chief of orthopedics there. He's instrumental in our participation, as well as Dr. Min Bo. Also very instrumental for us, and they're great friends. They have been so over the years. One of the things I like best about it is they do the post-op follow-ups for us. I mean, we're not there for the multiple months, as you know, of recovery, and they're very communicative. I get emails all the time. I get x-rays all the time. We interact with what should be done if there is a minor or major complication, and this works out really well. And my favorite thing going back every year is seeing patients who I did something on years ago. 2 years ago was the last time I was there. I almost came to tears because there was one little girl who I absolutely fell in love with about 6 years ago. She had cerebral palsy, required about 5 different types of tendon transfers. She was wheelchair bound when I met her. She was 6 years old. I saw her, like I said, 2 years ago. She's a healthy young little girl running around on both feet, rectus feet, doing great. And her mom comes and visits every time now. So they know we're coming next week. I'll get to see her again.
Oh, that's incredible. And, it's interesting as students are, one of the things that we like to highlight through the podcast is reaching out to students about just different opportunities that they can be involved with, and prospective students that are wanting to know more about this career, what opportunities exist in the profession. And I think global health is such an amazing, life-changing opportunity on both ends of that spectrum, right? For the surgeon that's going, as well as the patients that you can, impact their whole life. When you are managing some of these significant deformities, and as you said, it's not just like one group of things that you read about in a textbook and then you go there and you see it. What is your experience or your thought about the principles of biomechanics or internal fixation? What are the cornerstones that you can rely on in those challenging situations?
That's what it's all about, right? It's all about fundamentals. If you have the fundamentals in any endeavor, whether it's sports or surgery, you can succeed. And so we apply all these fundamentals, whether it's biomechanics. Everything comes down to biomechanics and biology, let's face it. And once you have those fundamentals down, you can proceed from there and excel. I rely heavily on my AO training, on my residency training. I did spend 6 months with Chris Addinger at Georgetown in lower extremity plastic surgery, which was probably the best part of my training. And I rely on that all the time. I'm constantly reaching into my back pocket, and I ask myself constantly, two physicians I need to shout out to, what would Chris Addinger do? What would Rich Derner do? With those two people in my back pockets, I can usually succeed.
Oh, that's awesome. We love talking about mentors too. So thanks for giving us some of the mentors that really, again, impacted your life and helped give you the tools or the voice that you hear in your head as you're, working up some of these challenging situations.
Absolutely.
Clint, I have a question for you. Do you raise money for the Vietnam mission trip through Bones Pro Bones? I mean, can our listeners donate?
Thank you. Absolutely. We just became a 503c. We do get funding because of our upper extremity surgeon colleagues. We do get some funding through the National Hand Society. I've reached out and we're working with the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons to help us as well, and to partner with them. And we will be having a major fundraising endeavor when we get back from Vietnam this time. We are limited by the amount of money we can take in because of the 503 status, but we hope to at least hit that limit every year. With that money, we can bring more surgeons, more residents, better equipment.
Yeah, that's great. Anything we can do on Dean's Chat to promote your entity and raise money for these wonderful mission trips, we're happy to do that, Glenn.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're doing it right now. This is awesome. Bones Pro Bono, everybody. Remember
Bones
that name.
Pro Bono. Yeah, we'll have to definitely take a link to that in the show notes. And actually, that's a beautiful segue to, I know you and I have worked a lot in terms of academics for students, but just to highlight a couple other major accomplishments from your CV. You've been involved with Midwestern University in the academic world, the California School of Podiatric Medicine with Samuel Merritt, Western University. You're trying to hit as many of them as you possibly can in your region. University of Virginia when you were there on the East Coast, as well as Virginia College of Osteopathic Medicine. But I distinctly remember one of my favorite conversations with you was, and these have always been just brief, but like you just leave like a nice imprint. And you'd said something to the effect of you were trying to just deliver as much of your knowledge and expertise to everyone in a public and accessible way. And so you have some really wonderful YouTube videos with some, there are some Vietnam slide decks in there as well, I believe, teaching residents to do surgery. Do you want to talk a little bit about the YouTube experience?
Well, I've always been of the mind that to be a complete physician, you not only have to know your craft, but you have to teach it. If you're not teaching, you're not a complete surgeon, in my opinion. And I truly believe, I don't know who said this, but I love the quote, is the only true way to immortality is to teach. And that's the truth. And so we do whatever we can, whether it's at seminars or in the case, like you mentioned, our YouTube videos. I try to put up concise, fundamental surgical videos that residents can follow. A perfect example is our distal metatarsal osteotomy video for hallux valgus. Almost 100,000 views at this point, and I'm constantly approached by residents in training telling me how much they appreciate and love that video, and that just stimulates me to make more. But we've done everything from bunion surgery to pilon fracture. They're all up there on YouTube. Just put in my name and they should pop up.
And we can put a link to that too, so that it makes it easy for people to find. And I love that again, it just the insight that you carry on some of this. You were past president for FACFAS, 2011 to 2012, I believe. Yes. Sat on the board of directors for more than 5 years, and multiple ASC our annual scientific committees to help put together the, scientific meetings that we have. So in terms of your willingness to serve and embody that idea of a teacher, I think is really remarkable. In all of those opportunities that you've had, what has been one of your favorite experiences? Oh,
in the teaching realm?
Sure.
I have to think about that. I've been blessed to have a lot of teaching experiences. Yes. I think some of the most gratifying have been speaking at the ACFAS annual scientific conference, speaking to my peers, and being challenged by my peers' questions, and debating. I love a good debate. So I think those are some of the more fun things I've done. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we already talked a little bit about it, but it's going to Vietnam and teaching the orthopedic surgeons in Vietnam our skills and our techniques. About 4 years ago, I was told that I was the very first surgeon to ever do an ankle arthroscopy in Vietnam, or at least in Danang. Yeah. So, and now when I go back there, doing arthroscopy. So that's really gratifying.
That's incredible.
Thanks.
Glenn, I have a couple questions going back a few years. We both went to the California College of Podiatric Medicine. I think we overlapped a little bit while we were there too. Can you tell us how you got into podiatric medicine? What stimulated you to go to San Francisco and go to CCPM?
Well, that's a crazy story. Thanks for asking. We have enough time. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually, from high school, went to college initially, and I dropped out after the first quarter because I didn't know what I wanted to do. But I did love to ski. I've been skiing all my life, and I decided to become a professional skier. So I was a pro ski patrolman at Mammoth Mountain. for what turned into 3 years, was supposed to be 1 year. And if you know anything about ski patrol, it's all about avalanche control and administering first aid to injured people on the mountain. Well, doing the first aid, I got to become pretty good friends with some of the town's orthopedic surgeons. And on days off, we would sometimes even ski together. And on some of those days off, they would invite me into the surgery center to watch them do cases that we had sent down to them, like blown ACLs. Now, I know now you don't fix acute ACLs. It's more of an economic thing, but that's another story. Anyway, I became friends with one in particular. And one day we were skiing together, and this literally happened. I looked at him and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to school. I've been doing this long enough. I've gotten it out of my system. I think I want to be a general sports med orthopedic surgeon. And he looked back at me and he said, buddy, if I could do it again, I'd be a foot and ankle surgeon. It's orthopedics with a life. And that never left me. And that really steered me for the next 12 years. So that's why I'm here today.
That's an incredible story.
Thanks. And it's true.
So Glenn, can you reflect back on your CCPM days? I mean, this is like a travel down memory lane, but with the surgery department and the biomechanics department and the Nick Diff, right? The diabetic foot clinic. Your thoughts? Yeah. How do you remember all that?
It's a blur, but I just remember working so hard. It's one of the hardest I've ever worked in my life to succeed. And I did know early on that being academically accomplished will get me any residency program I want. And once you get any residency program you want, you can pretty much live wherever you want. And so that's critical. And I do remember that. What I'm most proud of is that I was surrounded by people who became some of the biggest leaders in our profession. Graham Hamilton, Shannon Rush, Lawrence Ford. These guys were my mentors and peers. And we're still good friends today, and we bounce ideas off of each other all the time. So the camaraderie that I was able to establish at CCPM has paid dividends a million times over.
Well, isn't that the truth? Because Joe and I are always kind of mentoring students and trying to encourage them to spread their wings and get out there and go do clerkships all over the country to the most advanced surgical training programs they can. And it works. I mean, that you're right. You set the stage for options, and that makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. So what was your fourth year like? You did some clerkships, and then how did you land out in Virginia at Inova?
Well, like I said, I knew I wanted to get the best training I could possibly get. And in 1994, Inova Georgetown had one of the best reputations in the country. Very high-powered program, super high volume surgically. And I just set my sights on it. And I was fortunate to get the program. My fourth year was spent mostly, though, on the West Coast. And some of the more influential rotations I did, I'll never forget my time on the trauma service at San Francisco General Hospital. That just blew me away. And that's probably where I get my love for doing trauma surgery from. I love my clinic time up in the Northwest at Seattle. Also being around such academicians as you see at that program had a big influence on me. And another one of my big mentors on one of my externships at Kaiser Hayward, John Steenstra. And I'll never forget this. It was right before residency interviews. And I also was looking at Kaiser Permanente Hayward for a residency program. And it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn here, but I'm not. This actually was an interaction I had with Dr. Steenstra. And anyone who knows Steenstra knows just what a fantastic human being he is, and a smart human being, what he is. Anyway, we're in the locker room one day at the end of the day, just finished some cases. And I jokingly said to him, how did that case go? How did I do? Any feedback is appreciated. I really want this program. And he looked at me with like these puppy eyes and he said, Glenn, you're too good for this program. Don't apply. You need to go to, and rattled off a couple programs, including Inova. And I took that as a compliment. And 7, 8 years later, he became my colleague.
It's incredible sometimes how one person can help frame things in a way that reshapes the trajectory of your life, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then he became quite an influencer in my own personal life.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So I know when you had been, because you also worked on the East Coast for a while after residency.
Yes.
So you've been exposed to Kaiser on the East Coast because they do have Kaiser Permanente over there as well.
Absolutely.
What was it that helped or what drew you back to the West Coast?
Well, as you said, I grew up in Los Angeles. I've always been a West Coast person, and I've always wanted to live on the West Coast, and especially San Francisco. It's always been my favorite city. I can drive anywhere in 2 hours and be somewhere completely different, from wine country to skiing to hiking, mountain biking, anything. It's just a beautiful area, as you guys know. So I knew I was going to end up on the West Coast, but again, where I trained, I didn't care where I trained. And I tell this to students all the time, like, don't limit yourself where you're going to get your training. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that you get great training. Then you can choose where you set up camp the rest of your life. So this fortunately worked out for me, but I was always going to end up back on the West Coast. No question. East Coast is fun. Lots of academics, lots of culture. But there's only like one good day in the spring and one good day in the summer you can go outside. Otherwise, forget it.
That is
not as much mountain biking.
Yeah.
That is so true. I mean, your residency training is so important. I had a similar experience, Glenn. I went to Kern Hospital, and my wife and I were packing up the Ryder truck in San Francisco, and we kept looking at each other. Do we really want to go to Detroit? But it turned out to be the best decision I could make at the time. So.
Oh, absolutely. So I have a little of the Kern hospital system in my pedigree. As you may know, I'm Gary Arminio, Eric Loft, Steve Stern.
Absolutely.
They call themselves colonels.
I haven't heard that term in a long time, but I do remember that. You're right.
Yeah.
That is fabulous. You say you're going to do our ankle arthroscopies in Vietnam. Joe, you want to share our latest and greatest news on ankle arthroscopy?
Yeah, we have purchased some arthroscopy simulators. And actually, Glenn, I would love any time that you want to come play with some of this and help us think about collaborative efforts. There's so much interesting, exciting potential. But I have been interested in, surgical simulation for a while in terms of teaching and training students particularly, but then also even residents. And I'm curious what your take is on, we have all of these not restrictions, but administrative burdens, high efficiency ORs, and every minute is being accounted for. And so some of the ways that we used to train residents, having a little more flexibility in terms of the time that they got to do some of these things is kind of being squeezed, right?
Right.
And they don't really have a lot of easy opportunities to figure out how to learn some of these skills that are just a learned skill. And video games, believe it is absolutely one of those. So having something like a simulator device to really practice triangulating, practice, finding something and searching for it, the mechanisms of rotating and getting the instruments to do what you want to do. And so we've purchased some of these simulators to incorporate into our curriculum for students. But then also I've applied for the FACFAS research grant. So we're going to do some research on, does it actually help train, which my hypothesis is, of course, it's going to help. But we'll see. We'll see if it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Again, the things that we all think are, and actually in fairness, the orthopedic literature has looked at, and yes, of course it does, but we don't really have good data on the ankle. And obviously it's a much more constrained joint. The anatomy is different. So lots of different exciting things that anytime you're in Phoenix, you text me and we'll
I would
play
love
with some
to.
simulators.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'd like to jump back to your personal interest, though. You had mentioned something, the ski patrol for sure. My best friend lives at Mammoth, so we've connected over talking about Mammoth before and the restaurants that they have there, the Mexican restaurant in particular. Right. But anyway, you also have some really other fun life experiences in terms of scuba diving and photography.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk anything about other things that you love doing outside of podiatry?
There's a world outside of podiatric surgery. No, I try to have a balanced life. And yeah, I love travel. I mean, just love it. Travel as much as I can. I love scuba diving. If I wasn't a podiatric surgeon, I probably would have been a marine biologist. And I probably would have studied sharks. I just have a thing for sharks. So I dive with them whenever I can. did a good bucket list dive a couple of years ago off Guadalupe in Mexico. I dove for 5 days with great white sharks. That was spectacular. Just beautiful animals. I just got back from a dive trip to Thailand, some of the most beautiful reefs I've ever seen in my life. I still love to mountain bike. So when I was a teen, all through my teens, I also raced motocross competitively, which is a pretty amazing sport. And I don't do that anymore because I want to stay alive and I want to be able to work. Very dangerous sport, but mountain biking we can still do. I love to cook with my travels. I will typically, whenever I do a lot of solo travel, and when I travel, I'll typically do a cooking class wherever I go. And so I've translated that into another YouTube phenomena called Dr. G Cooks. So if you go on YouTube, I have about 40 videos, cooking videos from all over the world, different types of recipes. I think I specialize in the best is probably my Northern Italian style cooking and Asian cooking. But that's a lot of fun too. And I'm currently writing a book, which has been a lot of fun, which is my crazy last 25 years of my life condensed into a 4-year fictional residence program. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
That's incredible, Glenn. So in a perfect world, where would you be diving and what would you be cooking for dinner that night?
In a perfect world, I'd probably be diving in the Philippines, let's say a Coron or Palawan, and I wouldn't be cooking any of my fish friends that night. Maybe just making some amazing Asian dish of some sort.
That's great.
Maybe some spicy noodle dish.
You know, motocross racing doesn't fit in with those two other activities.
I know, but you grow up in Southern California and you do one of two things. Well, one of three things. You skateboard, you surf, or you race motocross. Okay. And let's do all three. But yeah, motocross was a real passion of mine. I was not good enough to break into the top 10 usually in my classes, but I was competitive. But I'm proud to say a couple of the guys that I trained with regularly, one of them went on to become one of the world's best motocross racers of the 80s and 90s, a guy named Johnny O'Mara and another guy named Jim Hawley. And I used to train with these guys all the time. So that was a real fun thing as well, a real blessing.
Did you ever have any close calls or injuries?
Oh, yeah. I broke my right fibula twice and my left forearm once. Okay. Yeah. Lots of close calls, lots of crashes.
Oh,
yeah.
It's good. Gives you that patient perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. We call them donor cycles for a reason, right?
That's true. Hey, at least what Isle of Man has that race where they go 200 miles an hour. At least you're not off doing that.
I wouldn't do that. No. Motocross, you'd probably never get more than 40 miles an hour.
Right. Very good.
Yeah. More technical.
Very good. I wanted to segue. Can I segue a bit from that? I want to talk about your years with the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons. Every year, we've got a club, of course, on campus, ACFAS, and students are always wondering how to get more involved. What can I do? It's always so fun to hear like past president's story. Where did you start? How'd you get involved with ACFAS? And what was it like making the climb up to the presidency?
So the way I got involved initially was doing research as a resident and going through the peer review process to get my paper published. It's both exhilarating and frustrating. But once you get that first paper published, a whole world opens up to you, even if no one else notices, but it's in your own mind. And from there, you can expand. Once I got out of residency and started practicing, the key was to gather cases so I could get board certified. And once I was board certified, of course, I joined the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons. The college itself affords fellows so many opportunities to succeed professionally, mostly, and of course, from a academic educational standpoint. And in my mind, there was no better foot and ankle educational system in the world than the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons. So I wanted to be involved. And I would fill out every time anything would come across my desk, volunteering. I would do that. And I would volunteer in any capacity I could. And then finally, after a multitude of volunteer scenarios, somebody submitted my name to be on the electorate for board of directors. And by some miracle, I got elected in. And I learned every year more and more. It was a growing experience. It took a lot of time and effort. So shout out to anyone that's gone through it, and to our current board members. They worked incredibly hard for our benefit. So they all the respect that they deserve and garner, we should all applaud them. But yeah, it was a little bit of a long haul. While going through that, I had some personal tragedy occur as well. And I should mention her because there's no way I'm sitting here today without my former wife. Her name was Debbie Savo. And she supported me all through school. In fact, she was a ski instructor in Mammoth. So there you go, ski instructor meets ski patrolman. And that should never really become a couple, because ski instructors, they ski with such grace and finesse. We call them poodles. And ski patrolmen, we ski really strong, and we ski everything, but they make fun of our technique. But we became a couple. We eventually got married. And after moving back to the Bay Area, she unfortunately was diagnosed with stomach cancer and passed away about a year later. So that was in 2008. But she supported me all through all of my little endeavors, especially through the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons. And so I owe her quite a bit. It seems like she gave me everything. But I got through that, and the college became my second family. And I was so proud to become president of the college, and so thankful that it's done, because it's one of those things. It's like they say, being POTUS ages you. Being FACFAS president ages you as well. So I was happy to get it done early. And now I can just sit back and reap the benefits of going to conferences and being asked to give us lectures here and there, which is always my pleasure.
And on that, as we've been kind of breaking up intros, your publications in peer-reviewed journal, multiple pages of things, as well as textbook chapters. I know American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons puts out e-textbooks, and you've published chapters in those on various arthroscopy, Charcot reconstruction, and lots of different trauma topics. When you think about research, what are some of the important things that what do you think, let me see how I want to phrase this. How do you think research shapes what we do in the future? Why is it important?
Well, it's evidence, right? We need evidence to justify the things we do to a patient. I mean, we have this otherwise intellectual, but quite frankly, medically and surgically ignorant human being in front of us that has a serious problem, and they're relying on our expertise. And that expertise has to come from evidence, and the evidence is sitting there in our research, in our journals, in our books. Having said that, it behooves us as physicians to know how to justify that evidence, how to vet it, because not all the evidence out there is legitimate, right? There's, unfortunately, human nature dictates there's a lot of bad research out there. So you have to know how to weed out the bad stuff from the good stuff. Having said that, I think it just behooves us to pay attention to the good research. On the other hand, it's not all about research, right? There's also benefit to anecdotal information. If I'm talking to a surgeon who's never published an article in their life, they don't know anything about research, they are not interested in research, but they tell me they've done this one procedure 3,000 times, and they're truthful, and they're telling me they have a complication rate of less than 1%, I'm going to listen to them. So I believe in research, but I also believe in experience and anecdote as well.
And I mirror that so much. And I think, as we've shifted in a good way to so much evidence-based medicine, there is also things that we have to acknowledge we're not capable of doing in every situation, right? We can't randomly, prospectively throw people into trials on everything that we do. So there is value in case studies and case series and technique papers. As you've kind of matured through your research career, what at this point, when you're reading through things, what are the things that really catch your attention or make you stop and go, oh, that's really interesting?
Oh, that's a good question. I have to really think about this one. Things that catch my attention immediately are data that makes me take a step back, that makes me question it.
Okay.
And if that happens, and if I don't understand the data enough, but I still question its validity, again, we talked about mentors. I'm really lucky. My co-residents at Georgetown and Innova were Paul Kim and John Steinberg. So I lean on them a lot, and I'll ask them about a paper and say, what do you think about this? And sometimes, like especially Paul, will go, that's BS. Don't listen to it. Paul's pretty straightforward about that. But thus, data sticks out in my mind. Numbers stick out in my mind. I mean, if you're publishing, a new procedure, the world's greatest, and you have an N of 7, I'm not too impressed, right? I know MIPO is the rage right now, and I'm still waiting for a decent paper to come out on MIPO. I haven't seen it yet. So I still do my cost-effective distal metatarsal osteotomy with $14 worth of screws, and I weight bear immediately, and they do great. So, change my mind. That's what I'm waiting for.
That's excellent. Yeah, when you were talking about Dr. Steenstra and how he kind of impacted you, Paul Kim, for me, no questions asked, like one person that just completely changed the trajectory of my career. And part of it was he had said, like, go up to the Bay Area, check out these programs. And it was not the original intent of where my thought process was going. And it just completely changed my life. So
yes,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Jeff, I remember being very disappointed that we didn't get this one as our resident at Hayward, but I was happy she went to San Francisco.
So I can imagine Joe was in demand. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved my time that I got to hang out with you, Glenn. It was incredibly tough picking between Kaiser programs for me. So I will always sing the praises of all three. At the time there were 4. I think the Kaiser experience is outstanding. Again, completely biased, so you can take that for whatever it's worth. But it's, when I was just talking to a student today about, trying to figure out how to do all these externship things and, and actually this would be a great question for you too, since you have taught residents and externs now for so many years. When you're guiding someone or giving advice about how to wrap a framework around where to start with that process, what do you think are some of the important, because now there are programs, so many programs, how does a student kind of try to figure out, all right, where do I want to go? What are your thoughts on that?
You've got to talk to people. Yeah. And the first person you want to talk to is the current chief resident, especially if it's a chief resident who already has a job. They'll be incredibly honest and forthcoming, and they'll give you the scoop on the program. CPME, I think, does a good job of gathering data, so you can always investigate that. But it just depends what you want to do, right? If you want to be a dietitian wound care specialist, you're going to gear yourself towards that kind of a program. If you want to be a reconstructive surgeon, you're going to gear yourself to where you train, for example. I think that's the beauty of our profession is even though we're a specialty that has a million avenues. And that's why I love it so much. I just had a thought pop into my head because we're talking about the San Francisco Kaiser program and mentors and stuff. If I can pop this in there, because I'm going to say hello to somebody for you Thursday night. So you guys know I'm into food and surgery. And so we combined in the Bay Area here, we have a doctor's dinner club. We meet once a month, somewhere different and fun in San Francisco. And it's usually the same kind of 4 people. And on Thursday, it's myself, one of my other great mentors, Jock Schubert, Lawrence Ford, and an up-and-coming star in our profession, Brian Derner. And it was always fun to have dinner with these guys because the conversation, it goes from, it's like what we're doing now, but it goes from just crazy gossip about the profession to the latest research to calling each other out on our latest procedures. It's a lot of fun. So I would encourage anyone out there, if you have an opportunity in your community, grab 4 docs you have great respect for and have a dinner club. And it's amazing the stuff you will learn. Once a month, do it. I highly recommend it.
That's
I love
great.
that.
That's great, Glenn. We started that last week a little bit when Dr. Schubert was in town. He came into the studio. And
that's right. He was for a concert there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was at Innings Festival. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So Jack and Joe and I did a podcast live here, and then we went over to Bourbons and Bones and entertained. Jack entertained us, I should say.
Oh, did he play?
No, he was telling us great stories.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it would have been awesome if he played. Yeah. Oh,
yeah. He had his guitar with him, folded up in his case. Yeah. So that sounds like a blast.
I went to Johanna Fest with him last August, and it was one of the most fun rock festivals I've ever been to. And it was just he and I, and 3 days of music, and I drank some of the best wine I've ever drank in my life. So, yeah, it was a great weekend.
Oh, yeah, there's so many incredible festivals out there. Like, we take that conversation offline, but music is such an amazing thing to bring people together, and it's always really fun to hear. And actually, since I never did get to operate with you, what do you play in the operating room, Glenn? What's your music?
Oh, you should ask my residents. I play a lot of hard driving rock and roll.
Okay.
But if you went back in the last 20 years and pulled out every single song I ever played and then gave each artist a percentage, by far number one would be Foo Fighters.
Okay. Yeah.
And then maybe Pearl Jam. And then another round of Foo Fighters. But I think Foo Fighters is my number one operating room music. Just hard driving rock and roll.
Yeah.
I remember I had one nurse, an OR nurse, who was very tough. Her name was Aura, and she was an ex-Israeli IDF nurse. Ooh. Very tough. And she really liked me, but she also didn't like me. And she waited until I was scrubbed in for the case and Foo Fighters would come on. And as soon as I was actually scrubbed in, she'd walk over to the wherever the music was coming from, my phone or whatever, and she would disconnect it, and she would reconnect to usually Tony Bennett or Frank Sinatra. And I would say, Aura, put my music back on. She would always look at me and go, Dr. Weinraub, you need to grow up.
Oh,
so, yeah. But yeah, the answer to your question is Foo Fighters.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
That's a great story. Glenn, we're going back and forth here and we're covering a lot of space, but you said something earlier that I wanted to bring up. You said when you were working on your first paper and you got it published, nobody else knew, but you knew, and it was important for you. I'm interested in this for our young students and residents, the psychological impact of having confidence and competence and the relationship between those. It sounds like you experienced that with your first paper, right?
Oh, absolutely. Again, I think it has to do with the people that are mentoring you at that time, your residency attendings. I did that paper with a guy named Eric Loff, who has since passed, unfortunately. But to this day, Eric had some of the best hands I've ever seen. And he was from Kern. It's this fantastic technical surgeon. And he pushed me on this paper. He didn't want to write any of it, but he had the intellectual acumen to tell me what to do. And so I worked really hard on it, did a couple revisions. It got published, and it's my very, very first paper, and it won an award at that year's ASC meeting in Palm Springs. So I was really happy about that. And that just made me feel so good. I think that's what stimulated me to get into research.
Very good. No, that makes sense. Because our students, and we have students right now that are going through about their third rendition of a peer-reviewed paper, and they keep coming back with more and coming back with more comments. And they know that it's important to know at the end of the day that something good's going to come out of it, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the process. And they have to understand that, you are not... Jack Schuberth always says there's only one guy on the face of the earth he ever knew that could do a paper one time, submit it, have it accepted. That never happens, and that's Jeff Christensen. But no one else will that happen to. I mean, there's always going to be revisions, and you just have to understand that's part of the process. And don't get frustrated. Just keep plowing ahead.
And also some of the beauty of that peer review process, right? Like, all right, here is all this research. We've dove in. We have it almost like a tunnel vision on this topic. And now we're going to present it to a panel of experts and have them give us feedback. Like, as much as it is frustrating and hair pulling, it's also what makes it so valuable is that it's not just these authors' experience with X, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And again, you were an editor, a section editor for JFAS as well as a paper editor. So going through those experiences and being able to look at papers differently is another one of those levels of maturity in being a surgeon and being able to say, hey, these are things you should think about in this paper that you're publishing. So yeah, I think it's
a humbling experience too, because when you're a young researcher, especially, you'll submit this paper. This is my best work. And you think this is perfect. This is going to be submitted and going to be accepted immediately. And then the next thing you know, you have like 50 criticisms of the paper and you've got to tear the whole thing apart and redo it. But yeah, quite humbling.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, there's an old saying that research and publications defines the profession, and it also lends credibility to its contribution to helping people in the medical way. So it's so worthwhile. I know that we've worked real hard in Arizona trying to get more and more research footprint for the students, for example, just to give them that experience, to give them a taste of what research is all about, so that hopefully they can take it to the next level in the future. Right.
And again, I want to shout out to American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons, because that is the driving force behind the quality of the research we're seeing in the world of foot and ankle right now. Over the last 20 years, they've taken us from a very low impact factor to a very high impact factor. Absolutely. And, we can thank our editors for that. Jack Schubert, Scott Millay, and now Hiro Shibuya. These guys, they're just absolute stars.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Totally agree. Joe, do you have any other questions?
I have one other question.
Okay.
So you've had lots of externs come through, and one of our common question, how do you be a good extern? Like, what do you think is the secret sauce to being a perfect extern?
Wow. I think the perfect extern doesn't try too hard. I think they should be a sponge and listen. They should read as much as they can while they're there. They should know the procedure that they're scrubbed in on top to bottom. They should have read about it the night before. Don't go to a residency program and not read every single research article done by every attending at that program, because that's what they're going to hit you on, right? Because that's what they know. But I think externs that come in and they're just way too helpful, they just end up being irritating. And you just don't want to be with a person who you find irritating for the next 3+ years. So my favorite externs, like you, Joe, the ones who they're just responsible, they're a sponge for knowledge, and when they're asked questions, they can regurgitate everything and sometimes teach me something. If you're an extern and you teach me something, I will not forget that.
Words of wisdom for our students. That's great. Thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome.
So Glenn, on behalf of the profession, thank you so much for all you've done in your career, not only academically, but training students and training residents. I think they're the unsung heroes in our profession in training that next generation. So thank you. We're going to send you a Dean's Chat cup. I don't know if you drink coffee or tea, but
I do. Got my Korean Starbucks cup from Seoul right here.
It'll complement your culinary expertise. And so thank you again. And to all of our listeners out there, if you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating. And of course, if you're on YouTube, we'd love for you to become a subscriber and check out Dr. G's YouTube sites for cooking.
Dr. G Cooks and Resident Lecture Series.
There you go. And we'll put that in the show notes, Glenn, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Joe. It's always good seeing you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been fun.
All right.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks,
My
Glenn.
pleasure. Bye-bye, guys.
Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.